Hello, everyone. Everyone, we're welcome into the Easy Climb Tech YouTube channel and welcome to our system design nights. Today, we're going to have two contestants who are going to be fighting for a free session with a mentor. All right, welcome in our contestants, everybody. So we've got Black Square versus Nobu, and they're going to be designing TikTok. So they have four functional requirements that they're going to be challenging for them to make the system functional and completely operational as if it was a system design interview. And then we're going to be comparing their designs to one another and will allow them to hack each other's designs and see whose design comes on top after the rigorous judging by the three judges from FAANG companies that we have on panel today. All right, so for the functional requirements, what we've got is that users should be able to upload videos, and they're about 60 seconds long. Users should be able to follow other users, and they should be able to have a curated feed of content, so just like your typical feed. And additionally, they should be able to like or comment videos, and we should have very upbeat and have to have a lot of fun. So make sure that the videos and content that we have is pretty solid. All right, do we have any questions from the participants about the system we're going to design?
Not at the moment.
All right, so to go over the rules once again, you guys have 45 minutes on your own, and you cannot hear the judges, but we can see what you're doing. After 45 minutes is up, we have 10-minute hacking phase per person. So you should be presenting your design to the audience. And then after you present your design, the other person has the right to hack, and judges will evaluate how well you hack other person's design. And at the end, you have the ability to hear judges' feedback and things to improve, and the winner will get a free session. So that's the overview. And if you guys are ready, we can get started with a 45-minute timer. Nobu, Lex, any questions?
Do we want the candidates to give a quick introduction before we start, Mary?
Yeah, sure. If you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Dev
Yeah, so
Maxing, you want to start?
how much do you want us to share, like,
You
our
can share as
job,
much,
like
or
where we work?
you can share as little or as much as you like. No pressure at all.
Yeah, sure. So I have around 4 years of experience in tech. Uh, I was at FAANG companies for all of that. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm like at around a software engineer 2 level.
Nice. Hell yeah. Well, thanks for that. Dev Maxing, how about you?
Yeah, so I guess for the past 3 years, I've been doing mostly full stack and client side work on my own projects. Um, and before that, I did 3 years as a backend dev for a B2B SaaS company.
Awesome. Yeah, this is some good experience. All right. So it looks like everybody's ready. Then I'm going to go ahead and share you guys your links to your designs. So please allow me a minute and we can move on with that. And overall, do you guys understand all the functional requirements and the things you're going to be focused on for today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and move you guys into the rooms, and you guys get the links right there as well. So we've got you the link right here. All right, Gavin, do you want to move the participants into their rooms?
Yeah.
Perfect. And you guys should have the design links right in there as well. Perfect. Looks like the judges are here. So what do you guys think about the problem, and how do you think you're going to approach it yourself?
Yeah, definitely an interesting problem. I mean, it's very similar to other, social media system design platforms that you might, design, such as YouTube or, X or Facebook even. Really, the crux of this problem is like scalable video storage and delivery. That's sort of the crux of all the problems. there's a variety of ways that you could tackle that. I'm curious if for those who don't know, Harry Jacobs, he actually does system design interviews at a FAANG adjacent company. I'm curious, is this a question you've ever asked before, Harry?
I have been asked this question before, and I have, seen how people would do something like this, but I haven't asked myself this question as an interviewer. So
Gotcha.
I'm kind of curious into, how other people would approach it. But
One thing I think is interesting is if these people have been watching the previous system design battles, I think the Reddit design actually has some elements that come in here because you've kind of got the dual mode of following other accounts or following a subreddit, as well as a curated feed, which I would want to see what type of semantic search type things people could do to do that curated feed by topic.
Yes, and by the way, we have a very special guest tonight, which is Salman Dan, who is the winner of the previous battle, which was Design Netflix. So if you guys haven't checked that video out, definitely take a look. The video is pretty amazing. And Salman Dan competed with Day Leo, who did a pretty great job explaining exactly how Netflix work. And that was a pretty fantastic way how you guys did the battle, kind of, retrospecting back. I think the Design Netflix was the most complete, the most kind of senior level battle we've had so far. Gaiman, what do you think?
It was even more complicated because we asked them to design Netflix live streaming.
Right, that was right.
Which made, I think it was probably the toughest, question that we asked, and I thought Soundman Dan did it, pretty much nailed it. So yeah, happy to have you join us today, man.
Well, thank you both.
Well,
so
I actually looked at the video thumbnail a couple minutes before, and it got me thinking. I was like, how I feel like this is potential to bring in some type of a vector database with embeddings to do that curated feed, some type of processing on either the audio or video, and then that'll kind of let us run some k-nearest neighbor similarity stuff in a recommendation engine pipeline. But I'm not an ML engineer, so I'm curious how that would actually go about in implementation in terms of like sharding a vector database and stuff like that.
Yeah, are you thinking like SQL or no SQL here, just in general? Just to kind of think about it a little more. Just fundamentally.
Well, I think your followers and relationships and stuff are definitely in a different database and potentially different database type than your content curation, feed generation, similarity rankings database.
I see. So that is pretty interesting that, the way how you approach this. And as an ML perspective, I would definitely say that the model that we're going to be using for this type of problem would definitely need to have a lot of data to train. So definitely would be really excited to see if either of the contestants would generate the pipeline for that model to be trained. I feel like one of the things that most people overlook during the system design interview is what are other things the system should be producing that are not immediately obvious, such as metrics analytics, training data for the future, and maybe automatically retraining the machine learning model that recommends something, right? Because as you watch a feed on an actual TikTok, and let's say your session duration is 2 to 3 hours or however long it might be, the expectation is that the system should learn by the end of the session and get better and better at recognizing what you like. So I think it's very important for either of the participants to really consider how something like that can work.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I was thinking of on a slightly different angle about letting the system drift over time in terms on the curation side. So if we forced like vector queries every time we wanted to pre-generate someone's feed, that could be really expensive. And I'm not exactly sure how caching works on vector databases because you'd have to kind of do it at a lower granularity maybe. But if you could if you could group similar, you kind of run your cluster analysis independent of pulling items into a user feed and attach new videos as they were uploaded to existing clusters. That would let you relatively cheaply pull from the clusters and put into users' feeds. But the clusters need to drift over time. So you might have some type of a TTL or a retraining daily or 12 hours or something like that that would allow clusters to drift as different topics, some one topic morphed into a second topic.
Very interesting. And Salman, then, for those who don't know how vector DBs work, can you give us like a high-level overview of what that might entail?
Yeah, I'm only familiar at a very conceptual level, but just say you've got like a group, you've got X and Y coordinates. A vector database might be on somewhere between, depending on the granularity you want, maybe like 50 to 200 dimensions. And so you get a coordinate to a point in space on a really high dimensional space, and the embedding ML algorithm will do semantically similar chunks in a similar point in space. So it's a little bit, I guess, more abstract of a semantic meaning than Elasticsearch, just say, which might be going on semantic meanings of similar words. And embedding would give you kind of a semantic meaning of a transcription of a TikTok video or some other larger blob of text.
I see. No, this is pretty interesting, and yeah, I think something that like I would consider here as well is definitely also thinking about how to handle the scale of even video upload, because that is something that most people would probably overlook. But one fascinating story that I've heard from the co-founder of Twitch is that they said that because other companies who were competing with them at the time for live streaming were using like a third-party provider to do streaming, the cost was so high that they ultimately ran out of money. And the reason why Twitch succeeded in the way, and we see the way it is today, is because they actually implemented their own streaming processing from scratch. So how would you guys even consider, building something like this from scratch, or would you just rely on some other tools that already exist for this, for like, let's say, video uploading? Dan, what do you say?
I mean, it sounds like
I
what you're
think
talking about, Harry, is like live streaming. I don't think any of our functional requirements talked about live streaming.
Yeah, but we still have to store and process a lot of data. So
I think we can almost cheat here because we've said these videos are 90 seconds. That means that the total, we don't really need to chunk videos that much. We can probably just save the whole 90-second video and have the app downloaded in the background while the previous video is running. And so I think that is really just a CDN there. Yeah, it's a smart CDN that can check auth to make sure the user signed in. But I agree with you that you wouldn't want to use something like AWS Elastic Transcoder to do your transcoding because you'd get so upcharged there it wouldn't be feasible. So the transcoding, I think, needs to be efficient. But the distribution to me isn't that hard.
yeah, I see definitely where you're coming from here. For me, that's probably much easier than do live streaming to have like a 90-second video. So essentially, to summarize for our viewers, what is the most kind of like a pattern here? So if the video is very long, you need to split the video into chunks and then store those chunks independently in S3 plus CDN on top of it. If the video is a live stream, essentially you need to do all of that on the fly. So get the chunks from the source, transcode them into different formats, and then share them with the clients, distribute them. But in case of a application like TikTok where everything is very small, you can essentially store the entire video in one CDN, in one S3 bucket with a CDN. Is that kind of how you would summarize this, Salman, then?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the application, we'd want the logic client side in the mobile app. to look at their rate. I mean, we know how long the video lasts, so we know when the user's going to have their next video. We want to have several buffered up so that the experience going to the next one is smooth. And we'd also want to watch our data rate, and that would allow us to pick higher quality or lower quality stream options for our N+3 or N+5 video that we're downloading.
I see. So essentially, feed has to be pre-computed and stored in some sort of cache ahead of time, right? Or how do you see yourself generating the feed and knowing, basically getting the next video all the time? So do you think that should be stored in mobile memory? And then if so, how many videos should we pre-compute or preload on a device? What do you think is a normal, reasonable limit here?
What would you say, Guy Man?
Yeah, I don't know. That's tough. Maybe, I mean, because sometimes people are scrolling pretty fast, right? I mean, you'd probably have a threshold, like let's say the number that we arbitrarily arrive at is like 10. Then you'd probably have a certain threshold, like once they hit the fourth video or something, then you load another 5 or something like that. I mean, I could see something like that being reasonable.
Yeah, I'm not a mobile developer, but it would be interesting to know what data the mobile apps have access to. I would
Right.
assume they wouldn't have free space on device access, but if they did, you could almost do some heuristic on, if this user's got 200 out of their 256 gigs free on their phone, we can go up to 50 videos, and if they scroll fast, we'll always be ahead.
Yes, and guys, look at this fantastic comment we just got in chat. So buffering is important, so is bitrate. So that's exactly a really good point right here. We definitely need to incorporate latency at which the videos are downloaded to see which type of quality we should be downloading on the client. So let's say if somebody's in the middle of a forest, they don't have a good connection. Sam and Dan, what do you think would be the most optimal way for you to determine? Okay, you should be watching in this quality, this bitrate versus something different. Would you just compare the download times and use that as a heuristic, or what would be the approach here?
Yeah, I think you would attempt to do it your, I guess, either normal or your previously adjusted bitrate and go from there. And it would be based on the time to download of a specific file. So the way I would think of it is the feed would be pre-computed. I wouldn't use the term cache, because I think cache implies more of like a hit rate percentage that you're going for, or least recently used or something like that. I would just think of it, I would say more of a pre-computed feed database with the video IDs that we think someone should watch. And you could potentially do a naming scheme in your blob store that the CDN was fronting with a bit rate or resolution or something appended to the UID of the video. And that allows the client app to pick a file name to get based on the bandwidth budget it has.
I see. Yeah, I think it's a pretty reasonable scenario here to kind of like do something like this. I'm curious why you said it's not a cache, because it doesn't have like the LRU standards. So I was curious, like, do we strictly want to think about caches like just hit rate percentage, or do you think it can be more broad? Like, because the way how I think about cache is actually in a very different way. So at the previous project that I was working on, it really was almost never used in a traditional way, and Redis was pretty much the go-to for storing any data that we didn't care if it would persist or not, and use it for helping to pre-compute something. So to me, what you guys are saying actually sounds completely backwards, in a way that I never really experienced using Redis as a traditional cache. So when you say it's a database, do you still imply that the data is not persisted there forever, or do you really want it to be like a actual database with full persistence capabilities?
To me, I don't think the persistence matters as much as the cost model. The cost model for Redis is reads and writes are basically free, pay for storage. The cost for a DynamoDB or Cassandra or something like that is you pay for reads and writes, and storage is basically free. So I think it would kind of come down to the benchmarking, because to your point, the persistence is not required. Redis is probably good enough from a data durability perspective because it can be regenerated.
Right.
But I would assume that we're going for potentially more storage than throughput, especially if the feed is generated while the user's offline and we don't know when they're going to come back. We're going to need more storage since we're generating feeds for everybody. But if we wait to generate a feed till a user's online and we think we can generate it fast enough to not hold up their user experience, then now we're talking online users are going to be heavier read write and less number of them, so less storage, and Redis might make more sense there. So I think it's an economics question.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm kind of curious for everyone in chat, how many of you have actually considered any economics or like unit cost type of concerns in a system design interview? Because to me, it sounds like it is not necessarily super common to have that addressed. But what do you guys think?
I mean, all of system design, like when you're doing these interviews, basically, what you're talking about is essentially trade-offs. So, I mean, if you can talk about these sorts of things, just like Soundman Dan did a great job of doing, I think that always works in your favor.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. And, in that case, it's definitely a very good trade-off to consider. All right, it looks like our contestants have some boxes down. So let's look at that. Wow, what do you think about this kind of like design of just like API gateway and then hitting all of them? And then we've got some databases, and some databases goes directly to the CDN, so object store to the CDN. So yeah, what do you think about this type of design? I know, Dan, you've been very detailed with your diagrams. So your diagram has been very, very closely oriented into each individual component. But how much value do you think is in even listing things out like this? Kind of like a very high level style.
Yeah, to me, if I was diagramming this out, I was thinking I would probably go more as a user persona and content flow. So just say in the top left, I would have content creator comes through the right path, coming, left to right across the top, and down to the middle would be where I'd put the databases, and then I'd put a read path coming right to left on the bottom. I think this here looks like a single video service that is both on the read and write path, but I think we want isolation between those. And the read path is going to have a lot of caching opportunities, especially since we're in charge of the feed and we want things to go viral. So that kind of gives us good opportunities for caching and stuff. So I would want to see a diagram that would separate the read and write path.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think I actually interpreted, if you go back, Harry,
Yeah.
it looks like each of these are services, right? That we have like a like service, a comment service, follow service.
Yeah, but
service.
that has a really good point. Like,
Yeah, because I think the circles are databases and looks like the squares are services.
that's a very interesting. Yeah, but yeah, I agree. I definitely think we should have like writes and reads as two separate things, to really show. My like favorite style of doing a systems design interview is actually tagging every single arrow that you have in a diagram, and explaining what is actually happening between those two things. Is this a read? Is this a write? And then maybe using different colors for different things, and then showing how cache can be integrated. Because it looks like in this diagram, follows service goes directly to the follows DB, which is debatable whether or not we should use cache, but it does look like we can have a lot of questions at the end to ask the participant what they're thinking here. in terms of Noble's design, it is very interesting how it's visualized. So we actually have squares and circles for databases, but the way how things are interconnected are very interesting to me. So what do you guys think about something like this?
The
So it looks
first thing
like
I
there's
noticed
three
is the
services.
24 hours on the cron. I think we're going to need probably faster than that.
For users to be generating the feed for them?
Yeah, maybe something more event driven, because I feel like some users are going to blow through their pre-generated feed more than others. But on the database side here, it seems like we got in the center that the circle is the blob store videos. The square is the video catalog database. But the top one's also a circle, and it's, seems more like a catalog database as well.
Yeah. Oh, look, we have a very interesting question in the chat as well. Just curious, doesn't Redis is limited by the size of system RAM? So it depends on how much amount of data we're trying to cache. So I have some experience, using Redis in this type of scenario. And I can definitely assure you that Redis can easily handle 5 billion records. At least that's how much I was able to do in my projects that I worked on. But definitely I would be, not surprised of the scale it can handle. One thing that you should consider is that Redis is actually very fast. The reads to Redis are 2 to 3 milliseconds at most, and that really reduces a lot of complexity for implementing and using that. So the size of the RAM, maybe it is capped in a singular node, but the Redis cluster can get pretty big.
Yeah, and one thing you could think about with if you went with Redis is optimizing your IDs. You probably don't need a full length UUID to get the collision resistance. So going with a smaller ID, like I think the Twitter snowflake came up on a previous stream. Something smaller gets you more videos per in a list in Redis if you're paying for RAM costs.
Look, very interesting question as well. We're caching the video chunks the beginning of the video, right? And they're compressed. Yeah, Dan, well, how would you approach it? I think it'll do exactly that. So by caching, I'm assuming you're saying it's going to be in a CDN. Curious, Dan, do you think you would put everything in CDN? Or what about the videos that, I'm assuming like 90% of the videos get literally 0 views. Do you think it's even worth to upload them in a CDN? Like, how would you approach something like this? And also curious to hear what do you think about like the geo distribution. So let's say this video is in a certain language. Do you think it's makes sense to upload it only in the CDN of that specific country? How would you design something like that?
At least I think the CDNs that I'm more familiar with, to me, it's more of a at least recently used pull through cache type thing. So it almost takes care of itself in the expiration of objects.
Right.
So I think that also takes care of geographic weighting, where if it's getting pulled a lot from one geography, it'll automatically end up in the CDN over there. I think there is a question on the reliability side of what is the origin that the CDN is pulling from. Are we okay with single region for that, or might we want a multi-region origin?
Yeah, that is a really good one. The origin and the location would be really interesting to look at.
So the other part of his question is if we're caching video chunks. I don't think we need to do chunks when we know that the hard cutoff length of these videos is 60 seconds, right? We can just store the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's convenient in that way. And if a client wanted to parallelize downloads, things like S3 and CDNs probably as well, you could send like range headers and stuff. If you wanted to have a single object that could be downloaded multiple connections in parallel, but I don't think we really need to do that because we'd get a parallel set of videos, and the app could download 2 or 3 videos at a time.
I guess the other question I have for you is this was a much larger concern when we were talking about Netflix live streaming, but do we need to take into consideration like bandwidth constraints? So like when we talk about pulling videos into our CDN, if the user has like crappy Wi-Fi, for example, do we need to pull in like different resolutions of video storage into our CDN and serve them lower quality resolution if their
Yeah, I'd say
network is
so.
bad?
I'd say so. I think CDN has to have every single video in every single resolution transcoded. Um, I believe the reason for that is that because it doesn't really make sense to just store them in an S3 bucket without a CDN, regardless of the type of quality they have. Dan, what you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. Like I mentioned earlier, I think that what I would go with is uploaded to S3 with a video ID and appended with some type of resolution or bitrate code, and then the app itself can monitor its bandwidth and select the appropriate file name suffix. And when it goes to get the video, it can kind of select its own resolution.
Very interesting. And Dan, what do you think about using the Amazon approach? And Amazon approach is basically when you pull in the feed on Amazon.com, it loads the worst resolution first and then immediately swaps it with a better one. Would you consider potentially using smaller chunks and then loading, let's say the user is swiping through the videos like crazy fast, and loading the worst video first, maybe first chunk like 5 to 10 seconds of low quality, and then pull in chunks for higher quality for the rest of the video, because 90 seconds is still considerable chunk, right? So
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that. The one thing you could potentially think about, and yeah, we do some that's where the metrics come in. Figure out at what point do people swipe to the next if they're going to swipe. Is it 10 seconds? Is it 5 seconds? Is it 15 seconds?
or is it
That
just
kind of informs your cutoff point. But if you wanted to be efficient in terms of client number of connections, maybe it doesn't matter because they're working a couple videos ahead of where someone's looking right now.
Right.
But you could pre-aggregate these short little snippets server side so that they could get one request could get 10 different little things just to minimize the number of requests. But the more I talk through that, it sounds like a bad idea because we're putting more processing on the server side. We want that CDN to be as dumb as possible, and because the app is requesting 5 or so videos ahead, it doesn't really matter if he's making a lot of connections. Yeah, I think it's a great idea to load the first 10 seconds separate than the remaining seconds of the video.
Yeah. And yeah, Gaiman, what do you think about just potentially doing something like this? What are your thoughts on, or maybe what are your concerns with those designs right here?
I mean, I think the designs look fine. The one thing that I'm not seeing in either of the designs is like, what are we actually feeding into our recommendation service? In my mind, I would want to see something like a consumption service, where as users are consuming the videos, you're tracking analytics about like either their watch time, their engagement, stuff that they can feed into the recommendation service. Because when we think about TikTok, what separates TikTok from all the different competitors is their recommendation algorithm is so good.
Yes.
And so I would like to see something in here about like how are they making that recommendation algorithm so good. I mean, we're storing stuff like likes and comments, which are definitely going to be used to feed the recommendation service, but I mean, there's other components involved there as well, and I'm not seeing that in either contestant design.
That is a fantastic question here. I would definitely challenge them during the hacking phase in terms of what is really the governance over the data quality. Because in my mind, the way how something like this would work is that we have a service that is like half ML, half engineering, right? So team split 50-50. And the only thing they do is that they go to the database of videos, parse everything that was recently written to the database, categorize it, and then use that in some sort of cadence / temporal workflows to pre-compute feeds or to put them in a storage. Because the model that is supposed to work is that you should really know what type of videos the user likes and how do we find more of those. So the storage really needs to be optimized for specific parameters for all specific video types.
Yeah, there's both sides there. Like you were saying, we need the ingestion side and the user feedback side, and we also want to think about how to do it efficiently. So ideally, we could run the clustering algorithms on write on video upload, and we capture the user's interests. And ideally, we don't have to do expensive query when we pull the expensive queries when we generate that feed. Just say if we define 5,000 clusters on of user interests, then we can sort the videos into those 5,000 clusters, and we can assign, we can analyze the likes and engagements from the videos into those 5,000 clusters. And now we're just pairing up, one channel in, one channel out, versus having to run expensive queries when we're generating people's feeds.
So, gotcha. So, are you suggesting that we like maintain sort of a static storage of what the user likes and how and use that to generate their feed rather than doing these expensive queries at feed generation time?
I think it wouldn't. Static would only last so long because it would kind of be TTL based. I think we would be wanting to, run clustering algorithms daily or every 12 hours or something on these newly uploaded videos to find new clusters that were popping up and kind of get rid of clusters that weren't getting as much engagement. And we would be remapping the user's recent likes from their most recent session or two to that new cluster list. I think there's got to be some cadence of reevaluation, but I think it can be on a cadence and not necessarily you have to run an ML clustering k-nearest neighbor algorithm every time you try to generate someone's feed.
Right.
You can kind of amortize that cost more.
That complexity should all be abstracted away from the hot path as much as possible. To me, the way how I would have done it is very similar to what you said, Dan. I would consider two things: the live path and the offline path. So for live path, I would do obviously the following. I'll get the feed for the user, download the video, and then show the video and then preload the videos ahead of time. As the user watches the video, I would be emitting a ton of events to a bunch of consumers. Essentially, I would have one Kafka topic that would be called like video watch user record, partitioned by a user ID, and then maybe another Kafka topic partitioned by the video ID. And both of those things would have a lot of consumers for many different purposes. For example, the Kafka topic that is a video partitioned by video ID would be there to react to every single watch event. So the way how I structured this is that every single time somebody watches a video on the client side, that would be considered a watch event case. And I would record exactly how long they watched the video for and other interactions with the video. Like how many times did they tap on the screen? How many times did they tap in the comments? How many characters they have typed into the comment field? Basically to get every single raw data we need to generate engagement data. So that's the Kafka topic that's partitioned by the video ID. So we can very quickly see if the video is good or not. That Kafka consumer that would be subscribing to that topic would be the one that would determine whether or not this video should be forwarded to the ingestion pipeline as soon as possible to further promote it or to stop promoting it to other people. That's one. The second Kafka topic that I would consider is the one by the user ID. So we also need to study users' behavior and see how engaged the user is to see whether or not we should alter the feed. Let's imagine this scenario. Let's imagine Dan likes, has a lot of video of different animals in the feed. And let's say then you go through all the videos and you just dislike all of them. You hate all of them. You just, completely want to get rid of all of them. So you dislike the first video about dogs, then you dislike the second video about cats, then you dislike the video about elephants. And let's say you have 100 video ahead of you pre-computed. How would you solve the problem of okay, we definitely messed up pre-computing the feed. What do? Do we have a reactive response or not? So that's the question. And the way how I would think about something like this is that we probably should consume the events from that Kafka. And if we see that the user is not engaged at all, I would even trigger the recomputation of the feed ASAP. That's kind of how I would approach something like this, because that's definitely a problem.
Yeah, I think that's a great design to get that fast feedback, so that, because if your feedback's too slow and it takes a full, pre-computed feed cycle of, you've got 256 videos in there that you've got to watch before you get content that aligns to what you want, a new user might just be done with the service before waiting for that new content to come into the feed. And I really liked how you had the same data being fed into the two streams partitioned on different things for different use cases. I think personally, sometimes I only think of the data going to one place, but I think that is a great reason to, dual write for different groupings.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Can we get a time check, Harry? Where are we at on time?
Yeah, we are at about 14 minutes. So
40 minutes?
Yes.
Gotcha. Do we want to check in with the contestants, see what's going on?
Yeah, I'm wondering if since it seems like we've got a more of a CRUD focused design so far, if we want to ask them to think about recommendation engines and algorithms and how that would work into their data flow in the last bit.
Yeah. Who do you guys think we would want to call first, the Black Square or Nobu?
Let's check in with Nobu here. See what's going
sure.
on in the head of Nobu. I don't know if Harry's talking or not.
I'm not talking. Yeah, I'm still waiting for Nobu to pick up the phone. All right. How's it going?
I think it's going okay.
All right. So we kind of wanted to know what do you think about the recommendation service here, and wanted to hear some of your thoughts, and also give you a time check. You have about 5 minutes left to complete the design. So, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah. So, wait, did I miss any functional requirements? Because I kind of missed the picture when you were just sharing it earlier.
Yeah, I think you just if you can just add a little bit more in terms of how the recommendation system would look like in the last kind of 5 minutes of the design, that would be great.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, see you in a bit. All right, perfect. All right, so what do I want to share with Black Square here as well?
Do they even have a recommendation service here? I don't even think they have one.
Yeah, let's provide the same type of feedback.
And ask them what sort of data points they're planning on feeding into it.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yo, how's it going?
It's it's a bit overwhelming, but I think
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Wanted to know what you think about the recommendation service and what type of data would be ingested there.
Yeah, so
And by the way, you have 5 minutes left for the design to complete.
oh,
So
okay.
if you want to just add that in, and we'll see you in a bit.
Yeah, so I guess for now I was just thinking like ideally you'd probably want to like throw in some like new videos that like the user doesn't follow but they might be interested in. You'd throw in videos from users that the user follows, and you'd also throw in some like popular videos as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel free to add this to your design, and the presentation will start shortly.
Okay.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like DevMaxer has given much thought to his feed curation. So that might come back to bite him during the judging process here.
Yeah, that's for sure. And also the hacking round. So both contestants will be trying and hack each other's design.
I feel like there hasn't been much, credence given to the data schema either. Like neither of them really outlined it too much.
Yeah, but to be honest, the problem scope is just so high. I don't really see how they can do all of this in 45 minutes. That's a pretty high bar. But whose design do you guys like better, just visually? And who do you think is going to be the winner after the hacking phase? And everybody in comments in chat as well, please let us know what you guys think. So this is Black Square, has a very good CRUD snake of all the services, I guess. Looks very repetitive. While Nobu took a little bit of a different approach. Oh, it looks like Nobu is drawing some arrows right now. But yeah, it looks like it's a very different approach with some feed generation and potentially some recommendation. So curious to see what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I was starting to write down my feedback for later. In terms of the diagram, I think Black Squares was easy to follow. I think it was potentially a little less descriptive of what the service would need to do as a whole to really, be TikTok's level of algorithm quality. But the data flow was easy to follow, and I like how he put the data schema next to the database, but off to the side. The other designs I've seen and I've written myself are more either the schema's inside the database circle or you've got a whole schema section like way off to the side. So I think that locality of a schema snippet next to the database circle is easy to read and good.
Awesome.
Nobu's I think is more of a spaghetti chart, but I think that will when they walk through it in the presentation, I think that'll really help. But it's probably closer to reality,
That's for sure. Yeah. All right, Gavin, I think it's the time to bring them in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get into it. All right, looks like everybody's back. So everyone in comments, please round of applause for both Nobu and the Black Square for an amazing time, and you guys' time is up. So please, hands off the board. Everybody clap in chat. Truly amazing design. Looks like it's the last design of the year. Since next week we're not gonna have a battle due to holidays, but the next battle will return on January 1st. So this is going to be the last chance.
That's still a holiday, man.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll see. We'll see if we want to do it on January 1st. We'll see how you guys feel. And super amazing stuff. So let's get this going. So looks like a lot of familiar people are in chat. So hello everyone. All right. So the hacking phase begins now. So you guys have 10 minutes to determine who is going to be the first one. Do you have a preference who would want to go first? Noble or Black Square?
I'll volunteer Black Square to talk about his design first.
Yes, Black Square, please go ahead and do it first. You're picked by the random coin flip.
By the way, Black Square, you're back in the Discord chat, so if you just unmute yourself in Discord will be able to hear you talk.
Yeah, looks like you're muted.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
All right.
You got 10 minutes.
Yeah, so basically, I guess I figured that like the video recommendation service was like the main importance, but for the design I had, it was like the typical API gateway handling the auth and the stuff we're not interested in. And then you have services for the likes, comments, follows, feed. I guess it should be called recommendations, and also videos. So for the video upload path, the user makes a request through the gateway. Video service
Okay.
uploads the video to S3 and stores like the URL along with like the metadata inside the video database. There's some CDC going on so that like new entries in the database get captured by these workers, which like fans it out to the users that follow the user that uploaded the video. So yeah, so they check like whoever's following the user and then
Got it.
like puts the video into that user's feed.
Got it.
Um
Okay. So basically, to recap, VideoDB puts the through a CDC in SQS, and then you're using Lambda to compute the follow and the feed for others. Is that right?
yeah.
Interesting. Okay, and the rest of the services, I'm assuming, for you are very much like CRUD. I was curious, like, how do you handle the high load of TikTok for making all this writes and reads from this? So it looks like there's a cache, but what about the follows and the comments? How do you handle the load on those two?
I guess I hadn't really paid that much attention to those sections, but I guess yeah, typically I'd probably throw a cache for like high for all like the counts that like you would normally be displayed. Um and I guess for like the like most popular content that gets like read a lot, you could cache that content as well.
Gotcha.
I had a question on you mentioned that SQSQ and the CDC feed, so that would kind of be a trigger on video upload. You'd fan it out to all the people that subscribe to that channel. So I think that works if the number of people that you subscribe to is producing videos roughly at the rate that you're consuming them. But what happens if you subscribe to people that are putting out a ton of videos and you don't get on that often, and they're outpacing you, or you're a heavy watcher and aren't subscribed to too many people and you're outpacing them? What if there's kind of a mismatch in the
Right.
volume of content produced versus consumed?
Right. I guess you would need to like store, like have a way to keep track of like how many videos are already recommended. So, like, let's say it hits some sort of threshold, then I guess you could replace like existing videos in their feed, or you could just like not put anything new, I guess. Um, yeah,
Ooh,
I
yeah.
hadn't I hadn't gotten time to like think through
I see.
that aspect.
All right, no, but do you have any questions to hack into your opponent's design?
Uh, sure. Like what? Why? Why do we need to separate like likes, comments, and follows to like different services?
I guess I was just thinking that in terms of like scale, it's kind of convenient. Um, so like if we store the um if we store the like count as part of the video database, then um uh
Yeah, what would be the downside if we store your like count in, let's say, in a video DB? Can you, what would be the trade off? Especially for the DynamoDB, which is denormalized. What, and maybe you could share
yeah,
why DynamoDB as well?
okay. I guess first for like the DynamoDB choice, it's uh just convenient for handling like the kind of scale that like TikTok has. And we don't really need like that complex of a query that we would use something like Postgres for.
I see.
Yeah, so like a key value store seemed uh, like it would fit the bill here. Um, for the trade-offs of storing light count in the dynam like with the video DB. Well, I think for like the videos that the user liked, um, I think it's kind of convenient to have that in its own DB because like let's say like a user wants to see like um whether or not they've liked the video, uh you would need to store that like somewhere, right? So uh
Right.
so like if you just keep like the like I guess you maybe could just put like the instead of having this video likes table, you could potentially put the like the aggregate count in the videos DB and uh like I guess that could potentially work, but I think to keep track of like which videos uh a user has
Uh huh.
liked,
I see.
uh I think that fits like in its own
Got it.
DB.
Any potential last minute questions for the black square? We have about 1 minute left. Noble, that's your choice to hack into your opponent's design.
Like more things to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really get what the SQS does. Is that like on video upload? We just like queue it onto people's feeds.
Yeah, basically. So the idea is that when like a new video gets uploaded, we want to like put it into like the recommendations of like whoever might be interested.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right, looks like the time is up. Everybody give a round of applause for the Black Square for making the design in just 45 minutes. So many components. Definitely very impressive. All right, let's move over to Nobo. Nobo, 10 minutes of fame is up now.
Yeah. So, uh, so I had a few different parts. I think I kind of like separated all the functional parts to their own service. So I had a profile service, a video playback service, like a get a user feed service, and then, yeah. I mean, like which parts do you want me to talk more about?
Sure, yeah, let's talk
Yeah,
about
one
the.
question on the video play service. So does I see that points to the video storage as 3 buckets. So when a user stream or down streams or downloads the video, does that video run through the user play service on the way to the user?
Well, the user would download the video and then they would play it.
Yeah, so the video play service, like, do we need to size that for bandwidth for all videos being downloaded?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that in the comments. I'm not even sure if I'm right about this, but like, so if we enforce like a 30-second rule on video content for TikTok, we wouldn't need to like chunk the videos. Like, if you want to go down that line of discussion.
That's an interesting one right here. And what do you think? I was curious where does the 24-hour cron came from? Like, what was there?
Yeah, so okay, so that's for the video, that's for the feed generation service. So sorry, my name is kind of bad. So the feed service is separate. That's just to get a user feed. There's going to be a 24-hour cron job, and it queues up all the users. And it basically checks like the list of the following, who are users following, and then I don't know, uses like heuristic or just, I don't know, for now we can just say like by view count, and then put like maybe like 100 videos onto a user's feed, and then like we write that. I think for this storage we can use like Redis, a Redis instance, because it's like key value pair. Just map like user ID to a list of user video IDs.
I see. I see. Okay, so in that specific sense, can you talk a little bit more about how the videos are being delivered here to the end client? So we see the feed is generated, but how exactly is the video? How does exactly the video end up on a user's phone? Especially considering the users are going to be in many different locations of the world. How do we exactly do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, since you brought up the point about users being across the world, we can, and like all the video storage is static. We can have the S3 bucket like have it on a CDN as well. That was kind of touched on the other design, so we can have a CDN here. But yeah,
I see. Yeah, CDN definitely makes sense. And what was your choice of the database here?
oh, for the
Yes.
let me think. So for the users and videos table, I think Postgres is a fine database to use.
Interesting choice. So, all right. Black Square, would you like to hack into Nobu's design? What are flaws you can point out?
I guess, did you mention that for like for keeping track of the user feed table? Like you'd store that in Redis?
Yeah, because it's so short-lived. So like you
Okay.
can say Redis TTL 24 hours because user feeds are like so transient. They're like, I mean, we're gonna like get rid of it so fast. So yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So there's going to be a ton of yeah. I mean, okay, I didn't touch on this, but there's going to be so many users. We definitely can't store like all of TikTok on one Redis instance, so we need to do like some sharding or yeah, like sharding based on user ID
Interesting.
and yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned you would store the video content on Postgres?
The video content, like the actual video,
Or
no,
like
that'll be on S3.
the video metadata. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess, can you elaborate on that choice? Let's say for like handling that kind of scale that like TikTok would typically get. Like how would you scale that up?
Well, I guess you can use horizontal scaling with Postgres, but okay, so I guess you can use like a key value store database, but okay, but okay, maybe since we're already using S3, we can switch to DynamoDB, but with UUIDs, okay.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Can I ask a quick question about Nobu's design here?
Sure.
So I'm curious, what sort of things is the feed generation service going to be ingesting? Because I don't see anything in your design here about like likes and comments, and I imagine that that would be something that, like, for example, the actual TikTok application uses pretty heavily and is weighted pretty heavily in their feed generation service. So how would you plan on
I mean,
storing
I'll
stuff
add
like
that here since those are important ones.
that? Yeah. And so which service is going to be feeding those to that store there?
And it looks like that's stored per
I think
video
that
in
this
that
is the
database.
service. Like these will be like instances. I think what I actually meant to do is like there's going to be like so that way it's not like bottlenecked. Like we would actually like queue this up and then send it to like the feeds, like the Redis feed where we actually store it.
Makes sense, makes sense, makes sense. Okay. No, this is pretty good. And no, but I think your time is up. So now it's
Okay.
everybody, thanks everyone for participating and looking at this. So now let's run a very short YouTube poll and see who is going to be the winner. But while we have the poll going, Gavin, why don't you go first and share some of your feedback?
Yeah, so are you going to create the poll in the chat then?
Yes, I've got it.
Okay, cool. Do you want to switch over to Black Square's design really quick?
Yes, perfect. Let's take a look at the Black Square's design.
So I think that in Black Square's design, I think there's a nice breakdown of responsibilities between all of the services. Like it's very clear, sort of the distribution of responsibilities here. So I thought that was nice as far as Black Square's design goes. I did think there was not a whole lot of thought given to the feed generation service or sort of that whole feed generation pipeline. It would have been nice to see a little bit more thought given there. such as what sort of data was actually going to be ingested by that feed generation service and how that was going to be used to generate feeds. It's also not super clear to me in this design how like video transcoding is going to work and how that transcoding plays into your CDN. I thought there was maybe something to be desired there as well. But I think as far as like on positive notes, I think you did a nice job answering the follow-up questions that were asked and clarifying the questions that we had about your design. And I think that's a really important component in an actual design interview is being able to answer the interviewers' follow-up questions. And I think your design got pretty close to fulfilling most of the functional requirements. So I thought overall it was pretty solid. If we want to switch over to Nobu's, I have some feedback there as well. I think a similar point that I brought up in Black Square's design, I think in this one there also was not a whole lot of thought given to the feed generation service. I mean, there's a little bit, but like as far as like what data is going to be ingested as well, like I think there was maybe something to be desired there. I thought it was maybe slightly more comprehensive than Black Square's in certain ways. Like I thought you maybe gave more thought to how people's feed was going to be generated. You have something about a 24-hour cron job here. I don't think maybe that's the best approach of handling this, but at least you have something down there. I thought that was good. In the original design, there was no like explicit mention of a CDN, which I think is sort of a staple or sort of a core component to something like designing TikTok. And then originally there wasn't really anything about likes, comments, or follows as well. And so I think ultimately my vote is going to go to Black Square. Like I think both designs are pretty similar, and like both contestants were on a sort of the same level as far as their designs. But I just think Black Square's got closer to filling the functional requirements that were given. And I think maybe they did slightly better job of answering the follow-up questions, which is something that I'm sort of biased to when it comes to who I pick for a winner. So my vote's going to go to Black Square this time, but I think both contestants did a very nice job.
Wow, very impressive. Thank you so much, Gammon, for sharing your feedback. So one thing that I can see right now is that we have a vote that has a 50-50 split. We are at perfect vote right now, perfect equilibrium, and this is the closest we've ever been. I think usually the participants, one is much better than the other, but our moderator that recently joined our Discord community, and by the way, consider joining the Discord if you haven't yet, I think definitely picked very good candidates for tonight. So I guess I can be the next one to provide some feedback to both candidates. And I think one of the things that I would emphasize, and Gaiman, let me ask you this question before I share my feedback. Do you think both of them would pass an interview at FAANG with this type of design in 45 minutes, like a Meta or Amazon or like Uber type of interview for system design?
It's tough to say. I mean, I think they would both fall within the sort of lean hire, lean no hire threshold, sort of right on the border. It really depends on how well they can articulate and how well they can go back and forth with the interviewer. But I think most of the components for the design are here, and like the fundamentals are pretty solid for designs. So I think it really just depends how well they can articulate why the design decisions they.
Yeah, for sure. I think Dan, do you want to go be the next one to provide feedback? Curious to hear your thoughts.
So I'll start with Nobu's. I thought when first looking at this, there's a lot of arrows, but I think that really represents kind of the interconnectedness of a real version of this system. At TikTok, there'd be a lot of data feeds going a lot of places, used for a lot of different stuff. And I think the feed generation was good that you thought about that from the very start. I think I saw that box pop up on the diagram pretty early on, and I think that is critical to TikTok's success as an app. One thing on like a business angle, you just kind of made a side comment down on the edge about it would help our technical solution if we could enforce a 30-second video time limit. To me, video the 30-second versus 90-second isn't that big of a technical challenge, that it would be kind of a severe hamper to the business to want to impose that limit. I think we really need to focus on like what's going to make the business successful and design our tech for that versus having a technical constraint kind of limit the business. On the feed generation, like I mentioned, I thought that was good. And yeah, and one more comment on the video. I think the pulling, whether we're using a CDN or serving it from a single region, I think we want to avoid pulling that video through an application service, because it's just a straight download. We can make it more efficient on our infrastructure to just have a file server do that. But I liked the APIs you put on the left, and showing the user kind of coming in, and the labels you put on the arrows going to the services. Those kind of make it pretty easy to follow. You can ready to go black squares. So glancing at this one, I think there's a bit of a contrast from the previous one. It looks a little simplistic, but I think you did a great job of breaking down the entities that were in play here. But I felt like you kind of just put your diagram together with a service per entity and a database per entity. It didn't really show as much interconnectedness as Nobu's for like, how the data might be used and related to each other, used together with other entities. But in your database, on your design layout here, I really liked how you put the short snippet of schema outside but close to the circle of the database. To me, that looks really clean and easy to read when I'm glancing through at it. I liked your DynamoDB. I think was a good choice for this due to the scalable nature. And I think it was nice that you were able to use that CDC feed off to SQS to do the fan out. I thought the fan out was a little bit more on the simple side of, every video would go to every subscriber, and that would kind of make you, need the match of content creator video volume versus watch volume. But I think you did a good job with the question and figured, you can either stop filling the feed if it gets too much, or to make sure they get fresh content, you could kind of do a replacement. So I think you answered that pretty well. I think your technology choices were pretty good, except I might maybe question Lambda for the feed workers. That's going to be a relatively, compute intensive thing. We could probably get some better economics with like an EC2 worker pool. But I think this would fulfill the functional requirements well. And so I think overall on black squares, I think it was a simpler design, less fancy, but I felt like it was very solidly executed. Like if I was going to hand the project off and say, go build it, that I would get something pretty solid coming out the other end. So I think for the implementability and the understanding of the design, I'd have to vote black square.
All right. So it looks like this is the second time where my vote doesn't necessarily change things, but I actually have some different feedback from both of the other judges. And then thank you so much for being the guest on the show tonight, and definitely some great feedback and very detailed, I believe, for both candidates that you shared them with this. So here's my take on this. I believe that if we look at the functional requirements of the system and what we really ask people to do, we really need to review like what we really asked, right? So who and how listen to the instructions here. So upload a 60-second video, browse the accounts, like and comment on videos, and follow other people I think it's very evident that Black Square has executed on those requirements really well, because this is exactly what we asked of them to do. While that's the case, I really want to admire Nobu's design in terms of the attention to detail, in terms of how well they really thought about this. I would say that the feed generation idea with a cron and SQS, and putting this into the feed service, is more similar to how this would be done in the real world. But I believe that due to the fact that there are so many requirements and unfortunately not as much time, Noble were not able to execute and deliver on all the requirements in the video. But one thing that I can say about their design that was really superior is basically the use of the database. Well, I don't necessarily agree that Postgres would be the best choice, since this is the normalized data using a list, and Postgres is probably better to keep it normalized. I overall feel like this design is better addressing the service in terms of uploading the video and getting the video over to the system. So that's kind of there. For Black Square, I have quite a bit of critique on the AWS feed workers and the feed.db and the follow.db. So to me, that seems like with every single video uploaded, we want to push it to the feed.db, which I don't necessarily agree with this. I believe that the much better way to route this through some sort of ML service, and while Noble also haven't considered specific ML solution for this, I believe that event-driven architecture that pushes directly to the feed worker is not necessarily the right idea for this. So that's kind of where I am with that. In terms of just making all the requirements work, yes, this design does fulfill them, but I feel like the design lacks a lot of depth. So we have the comments table going directly to comments DB, and the comments DB entity is very surface level. And because I feel like we should have focused, instead of basically making all those components kind of like a copy pasta, focus on a framework. So a great design for something like this would have had a data layer, maybe service layer, maybe a presentation layer, and finally the hydration layer. Instead of making those singular API requests for every single microservice at an API gateway level, I would assume that a great design would naturally just say, hey, I want to get some video, and the video API would then use a framework to request all those codes in parallel, rather than making this directly from the API gateway. So for those reasons, and for the fact that Noble was more attentive to detail, I would say that my vote goes to Noble for this. So that's kind of some of my thoughts. And looking at the poll, looks like Black Square won 56-44 over the audience. But yeah, that was a really amazing design, I think, today. It was the closest that we've ever had.
Yeah, I thought that was great, and I think both contestants would be a great team, executing together on a project and really complement each other well.
Exactly. One contestant really went into a lot of breadth, while the other went into a lot of depth, and really shows how every single system design interview is different. Every single person is different, and it was really fun to see how those people work. But I would argue that both of them would pass a role for Meta or Amazon as a E4. I think with some guidance and some more practice and confidence, that both of them would be able to pass. So I think they definitely meet the bar for E4. And yeah, congratulations again to Black Square for squeezing the victory over. Your prize is a free session with a mentor at easyclimb.tech. So please reach out to myself and DMs, and I will be providing you with your promo code for the free session. So definitely the mentor will be happy to work with you and review your design for the previous battle and provide a more in-depth feedback, as well as do some further guidance on how to make this more scalable. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. And yeah, thanks everybody for attending. Thanks everyone who voted. By the way, voters went back to 50-50. So 10 voters for Noble and 10 for Black Square. So audience really is very indecisive. So let's end it at the 50-50 split. So definitely was very close. And yeah, see you guys on Discord. Thanks everybody for chiming in. and have a good night and happy holidays for the rest of the year. All right,
Yep.
bye everyone.